Okay, so welcome, Dr. Hanan, or Hanan, as she is a great friend of mine, and we go back so many years, and we've been there, walking beside each other,
Yeah.
listening, sharing our experiences, and I never forget Dr. Hanan's the first time I interviewed you. I think it was your Onion podcast, and it was
Yes.
such a fantastic podcast because I thought, wow. She is amazing. She is someone that is just so knowledgeable, someone that I could never be. And she's got all these qualifications as well. And the the conversation lasted over an hour. And then I said, okay, look, I've got to have you back. And you came back and we had another amazing conversation. And from that, we've just always kept in touch and we've
You're
been there for each other. And now we meet on a regular basis, having a coffee and yeah, share our stories
sharing
and
our
hear.
healing
Say again.
and sharing our healing.
Absolutely, and it's been weird because we kind of are strangely experience the same things, and we're kind of parallel in our own
Yeah,
little universe, and
that's true.
it's been great. So I really appreciate and to have you kick off this kind of podcast, although it's kind of on the back of my daily lives, which is just literally because I put it out on YouTube. It's just got an amazing response that people want to come on. And I thought, well, I know people want to come on, but the first person that I want to come on
Oh, yeah.
my show is Dr. Hanan. So
My
thank you.
honor, honestly. Thank you. I know when you send me, would you like to do this? I'm like, of course. I never say no to you to have a conversation.
I would have been surprised if you said no. So
Never.
my first question is, where are you now? Because that's what I do when I'm coaching people is I want to find out, I want the audience to be walking beside you and how you're seeing life and experiencing life now.
Whew, that's a weighted question on so many levels. I think just to give a bit of context, so I'm based in Qatar. I'm Egyptian. So if we're looking at the physical location of where are you now, I am in Qatar. I think everyone that would be watching this would know that the region has really experienced a lot of instability the past few weeks. And I think for me personally, it really did shake me, shake my foundation because it brought up a lot of trauma from childhood. I was in Kuwait when Iraq invaded. So the 12-year-old me reemerged 35 years later, just saying, oh my God, our safety is kind of at stake. Understandably, of course, and we are grateful that we are not physically unsafe. We are safe in Qatar. They're doing an amazing job with all the defense that's being there. But for me, it was kind of a testament to my healing, the one that I've spent so many years doing and the one you were just talking about, because the previous versions of me would have been in a complete panic attack right now and shut down and all of this. But I'm grateful to have reached this position where I am experiencing a more healed version of myself that's able to acknowledge all the trauma and the emotional distress and everything, but at the same time employ my rational mind and start looking at stats. And I'd even shared this reflection in a post on LinkedIn just because I'm like, oh my God, that the human body is such an amazing mechanism. Because initially the body reacts to stress, kind of like survivability with the adrenaline and cortisol just kind of flowing through our bodies and stuff. But the body's main function is to try to regain its homeostasis. And this is it's just the basic functionality of the body and to be able to function properly. So that for me was indicative of what's happening right now for me personally is okay, I have a business. I'm a business strategist. I loved what I'm doing, but that had to take a back seat. It was about safety. It was about security. It was about, looking at my identity and where I am and my family, of course, my husband, my son, and myself. So all of these elements showed me that I'm a more healed version of myself that is able to process information, is able to make rational decisions. I call them as informed as possible decisions because you can never make an informed decision. What you decide on today could change tomorrow, and we are seeing this live every day. And that for me was where I realized I am now in a better position than I was a year ago, 5, 10, definitely 20 years ago. And that has also been the accumulation of not just my healing, but also my professional journey, going, from corporate to having my own business, multiple businesses actually first with partners, and then kind of having my own business, the business doctor right now, and looking at it and always revising it. As I said, I'm a strategist at heart and mind, so I'm always re-strategizing as per not just what's happening externally in the market and all developments and AI and all that, but also internally, is it still aligned with me as a person and with my objectives and with my life kind of vision? And I think that's where I am right now. I don't know if that even answered your question.
No, that was beautiful because I feel every time we speak, I feel that you're kind of there walking, as I said at the beginning, walking the same kind of journey. And isn't it amazing how, what is happening, things do show up, but
Yeah.
because we've been on this journey, we're more able to understand what's going on. Because we're further down or further along on that journey, and we've learned on that journey, we've learned more about ourselves, we've learned more about the environment that we're in. And as you said, if it happened a year ago or 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, we would have reacted in a completely different way. But because this journey we're learning, we keep on understanding or figuring out things,
Yeah.
and we're
Yes.
questioning and watching internally as well as externally, we're in a much better position to handle the situation. And
Yes.
it's so beautiful. And that's where I want my clients to be when I am taking them on this journey, is to understand the journey that you've been on, to learn from that, to understand where you are and how you can use all of that understanding, all that learning to move forward in a better, more enlightening way.
That's true. And you know what, Stefan? It's I think the thing that we all need to focus on is to give ourselves some grace. As you said, we're learning every day.
Mm,
And it's not a matter that Tony Robbins, I know, okay, I agree and disagree with a lot of things he says, but he's got the statement, life happens for you, not to you. And yes, I I was victimized in my own life for a considerable number of years. But when I had to switch that lens around and say, okay, what is this, as you said, what is this teaching me? Or
mm,
what am I learning from this? And reframing a lot of what was happening in my life, I could come out on the other end as a relatively more evolved version of myself. But I have to give myself grace because, as I said, you make as informed as possible decisions based on who you are today. Like going back to that question you're asking, where are you now? It's based on where I am right now. When I look back 10, 20, 30 years ago, oh my God, these decisions, I was like, what was I thinking? But it was who I was back then.
absolutely.
I've made things that have harmed me, have hurt people around me, cost me dearly financially, emotionally, mentally, what it is, whatever it was, but I learned from it. And when I gave myself grace to say I've made a better choice today than I had yesterday or than I would have a year ago, that in itself is my biggest present to me.
Mm, beautiful. All right. You mentioned about the lens. Let's go back to when you put that lens on yourself. When you look back now, what have you learned from that journey? Because I know it's been an incredible journey, and we don't have time. We don't have the
As I told you, this could go
to
on for
go into
hours.
absolutely. So if you could turn that lens on a certain point in time on that journey in the past, where would it be pointed to for you to realize or understand who you were or what you wanted to become, or what was the situation that there was a turning point for you?
Like, looking back, there are many, I think, kind of road forks, like
Yeah,
intersections
yeah.
along my journey that I wish I had made. Well, I can't wish, but I hoped that I had made a different decision, would have changed the trajectory of my life. But one of them, like the most fundamental one for me, is the one that happened about 8 years ago. That's when I walked out of the last of four businesses I was building with partners in France. And I thought I was walking away empowered. I thought I was walking away because, I had a bigger objective. I was completing my doctoral degree then, and I was like, I'm all focused, and I was doing consulting jobs on the side to finance this and all of that. But I I had I hadn't realized that I was walking away a very disempowered version of myself and traumatized. I was traumatized by going into private business with friends who I considered best friends, brother, a best friend, a sister, all of this. And I walked away and I held on to all that pain. And that caused me to cocoon for maybe up to 2 years. As I was coming out of the cocoon, that's when we first met. And I remember you asked me that question. And that was, by the way, that was my first podcast interview ever. So, kudos. When you asked me, where have you been? And I'm like, I'm my best kept secret because I was like staying home. I didn't want to get exposed anymore.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah,
you remember,
I saw it, absolutely.
but the point is that version of me was a victim in my own life. I believed, life was happening to me. I believed everyone else had power over me and that everything I was doing it was external bound. I wasn't doing it for me. I was doing it, the doctorate for my mom who was yearning for that pride, the businesses for my friends and kind of for me to be doing something and gaining financially. E- Everything was that. Even my family, I felt like I was doing it just because I had the roles of mother and wife and, daughter and sister and all of this. Um, and it took me a while to just stay there and just be there and not know. I was just like kind of doing the work, robotic. I'm studying for my doctoral.
Which sounds exhausting. Even when
Yeah,
you're talking about it, it's just like, how did you manage? How did you keep it all together? Because it sounds totally exhausting.
somehow I did. And I remember telling people what I was doing because I was like running two businesses, at any point in time. My son was still a toddler, my husband with his work. I'm an expat with no system, like family support system in place and stuff. And when people would hear everything I'm involved in, I'm like, oh my God, you're superwoman. And I used to say, am I? Always like triggering, am I? Should I
Mm,
be? And I think that's the other part is we should not be superhumans
no.
because there is always a bandwidth. And that bandwidth for me I kept crossing it because I get psychosomatic symptoms, which means my body manifests all that stress into physical symptoms. And there was a point where I was literally collapsing health wise, but I'd still go just because I have that responsibility. So I was kind of mechanical and robotic in my responsibilities until one day I remember dropping my son off at school and coming back, ready to go and work on my doctoral study and do everything else I need to do. And I just had this feeling of I'm done. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired of everything. And I remember opening up my mobile, going to YouTube and looking for positive motivation speech. It's just as simple as that. And that for me was the turning point where I started. It's, when you listen to these things, excuse me, again, everyone has their own story. You can't take it and say, I need to apply everything. This is, yes, you can have similarities in the stories and the hardships and some of the traumas even. but you cannot take that solution of how they came out at the other end and say, that's what I'm going to do. That's my only path. And I realized that I started kind of weaving my own recipe for a healing journey. And I went through a lot of healing modalities, therapy, pranic healing, everything that's under the roof of what healing should entail. I did that. I did the meditation, the affirmations, whatever it is. And I started creating my own kind of canvas of what works for me.
Mm.
But the most important part was going back. I call it for reflective healing and looking at myself in these situations. And that's why I was saying you need to give yourself grace. Looking at who I was back then and why I accepted whatever happened, any form of distress or forms of abuse of certain types, and realizing that it happened because that's who I was then. It's not because I'm a weak person. I've proven to myself over and over again, I'm not a weak person. No, I don't think anyone is a weak person. We do rise. Everyone is a phoenix of sorts. We do rise from the hardships of the worst times of our lives. But when you rise with the learning on your back and kind of embedded within your new framework right now. And I looked at that and I started saying, okay, I understand now why this happened and who I was back then. And now, okay, this is a new kind of layer of I accept this, I don't accept this. But it doesn't stop there. There is no ceiling to this healing. So every time something would happen that I had not addressed or gone back and done the reflective healing for, I'm like, I thought I dealt with this. Oh, this is a new layer. Okay, fine. Now I accept this. I don't accept this. This is my new kind of SOP, my standard operating procedures and manual. And it kept building up this way. I don't think we are ever healed, but healing is a beautiful process to be in because it allows you to look back, to reflect, to adjust, and to adapt, and then to kind of try out this new version of you. And then, kind of stop at another roadblock of, I didn't expect this to happen now. I didn't expect me to react this way. I didn't expect that to, block me. And then you do the same process over and over again. So that for me was that process. And as I said, it's been at least 8 years as we started. I'm a much more evolved, healed version of myself. I'm not aiming for perfection. I'm aiming to be a better version of me on a daily basis, on a monthly, annual, whatever it is. And I give myself these kind of checkpoints of stopping and saying, okay, where am I practicing a lot of gratitude for everything, not everything that in my life, just everything that I am, everything that I have, everyone that I have in my life. That for me has kind of been my grounding rock, and then building up everything around it and then asking myself, what else could I be? Who else could I be? Who else could I impact? And I believe that we have been created to positively impact on the world, and any interaction with any person at any point in time, whether you are giving a speech to tens of thousands of people or you're buying your morning coffee, I believe we always have the opportunity to positively imprint on someone else's life, which is exactly what you are doing on a daily basis. And I know this is where, how we bonded so much, just because we have that vision for our lives.
Absolutely. That was beautiful. And thank you for sharing. Thank you for being open and honest and vulnerable and allowing us to walk beside you on that journey. And it's incredible because, what came up for me while I was listening to you was that a lot of people aren't or not aware of that self-reflection, of looking at how did I get here? Why did I get here? How did I end up the way I am? They they do the self-help books that and they're trying to hold on to things without understanding how they got there in the first place. And
Yes.
they lose themselves in this help. As you said, you were trying different things, which is great. That's how we kind of work out what works for us. But what works for us, but not understanding who we are as us in the first place. And literally you were talking about the programming, all that programming that got you to where you are.
Sure.
You were literally going into the database, you were going into the programming
Yeah,
and figuring out how the hell was this program written and why
exactly.
am I responding to this, and can I rewrite that? And that's what you have literally gone and done. You've literally gone in there and you're creating new programs. And
Changing the source code, yes.
absolutely. And you're going, is this going to work? And that's what we do.
Yeah,
And that's what you're describing. You're describing yourself going into the original program, seeing how it was written, why it was written, who it was written by, and then, okay, I don't need this. This isn't working for me. So I'm going to rewrite something. And then new code. Let's see. Let's see how it feels. Let's see how
yeah,
it goes. Is this right for me? Is it not right for me?
that's true.
That's basically what you were saying, and it's just like it's beautiful. And as you say, it's never going to be perfect because it's look, the original code wasn't perfect, and now I'm rewriting that code, and now I'm trying to figure out if this code is what I really want, while also learning new things about how to support yourself on this journey. And the beautiful thing, again, what you said was listening to your heart and helping others. And as you say, that's what we're there for. We're here to help each other on this journey because we're all trying to figure out what this journey is about. There's no
Sure.
manual, there's nothing
Nope.
to say, hey, this is you, this is the manual for you. No, there isn't. And the parents are trying to work out who
Yeah.
is this thing? We don't know. All we've got is who programmed us. And we're trying to figure out us in a relationship as new parents, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they do the best they can with the limited knowledge that they have, et cetera, et
Yes.
cetera.
I have to comment there is part of our source code, as you were saying, is also embedded within it is the blaming factor.
Mm.
I blamed my parents. I blamed my partners. I blamed society, culture, whatever it is. And I think part of the changing is realizing exactly what you said. Everyone did the best that they could with what they knew and who they were right there.
Absolutely.
Could they have done things differently? Hell yeah. Yes.
Okay.
But, but that being said, I am taking control right now. And I
Exactly.
can change my story and I can change my trajectory and I can influence my son a little better than what happened before. Does that mean I'm doing a perfect job with him? Of course not. He will have his own small t, capital T traumas, I'm sure. And there will be a point where he will blame us for something, I'm sure too. But I'm still like kind of what Maya Angelou used to say is like, when you know better, do better. And I think that's the essence of it. We're just trying to do better. But you can't do better, exactly what you said, if you don't know. And you have to know. You have to go back and just know. Don't get stuck there, because
No.
getting stuck there is the thing that kept me frozen for so long, because I was stuck there. I was knowing, I was blaming, and I was doing nothing about it. Nothing's going to change unless you do. Unless you change, I call it kind of changing the parameters in the equation. Change the parameters to get a different result. If you're always going to be using the same parameters and wondering why it's not working, it's because it's math. 1 + 1 = 2. Okay, you can argue that a million times, right? But you can change that for you and for your family. It's kind of looking at your impact circle and the ripple impact effect, whether that's one person, 100, a million, whatever it is. Just start with you and then see how that can resonate outward.
Oh, 100%. And it reminds me of a conversation that I had a couple of days ago where my children went out to the supermarket and they were bickering, and then my daughter comes back and says, "Dad, my brother used the F word." And the old me would have reacted in rage. And I could feel it. And it was just like, no, I'm not. I'm not gonna go there because I know nothing will benefit. No one will benefit from that rage. I need to look at it in a way that, okay, how am I showing up? Why was it triggered? Why did he feel that he had lost control? And what was my daughter doing to literally press that button to literally trigger him? So I was
Yes.
looking at the bigger picture. So I needed time to think about it and to decode it all. And then I invited each one of them separately down and I had the conversation. I said, "You lost control. I just want you to be aware of that. You know that isn't right. You know you don't use that kind of language, especially to your sister, and you lost control." And then obviously it's the blame game, etc., etc. So then we had to decode all that. But at the end of it, he was able to understand it better, understand how he had showed up, understand how she had triggered him, etc., etc. And then I brought my daughter down and we spoke. I said, "You knew what you were doing, and you pushed him, and
Yeah.
you're very clever. And the fact that maybe you've gone to bed late, that you haven't got the patience for your brother, and you're using all the facial signals to press certain buttons. You know, you're very savvy." So I stood back and I went, "Great."
Wow.
Rather
That was
rather
good.
than walk away all frustrated, angry, and that could have carried on for a few hours, which the old me would have done. And my older children have those stories where dad lost it, where dad was out of control. And they laugh about it now. But I kind of think now, how did I affect them by me showing up like that? By me expressing that anger, and how for such a young child to experience that, to see that. And that kind of makes me like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry that I should. But as you say, I was doing the best I could at that time with the limited knowledge that I had, with the situation that I'd never experienced before, for the love, for the frustration. I didn't know. I didn't understand. I didn't understand the new me. I didn't understand that the programming of my dad. And now when I look back in acting the way he used to act because of
Yes.
frustration, it was literally coming through me. And it's only as you go further down the journey and start learning and looking back and learning from others as well. I watch and I listen and I think, yeah, I'm not going to, I'm going to be more reflective in what's going on. I'm not going to literally believe this as soon as something pops up. I'm going to take time out. I think there's one coach that says count to five. That gives you the time to breathe, etc. Is it Mel Robbins? She says something about
Yeah. The
she does
yeah
something,
5-second rule.
the 5 second rule. So yes, so my kids now, and I think, yeah, they're teenagers now. They are going to test me in different ways because I've never, my previous teenagers were separate from me. But now these two are living with me. So I know they're going to test me. But yeah, test away, because I'm a much more better person than I was years ago. And I think we can all learn. And also, as you say, with this experience, with these lessons, they can take something with them that they
True.
won't remember that, oh, it's okay just to throw everything out just because you're frustrated or angry. Now they can start thinking about, why am I feeling like this? Why am I reacting the way I am? And how that affects everyone else around me.
True. True. Very true. And I think that that's our responsibility, not just like, as you said, it's our responsibility to ourselves and to our children. Like what you said, like reflecting back on my parents, how I was raised, and everything else, I started changing my language with our son.
Mm,
And like when we used to go to school, I drop him off every morning at school. And as he's getting out of the car, I tell him, make yourself proud today. It's not It's not about the grades. It's not, just embedded that in him. And I know most of the, yeah, yeah, kind of he dismisses me more or less every morning.
yeah, 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 yeah,
But I
yeah.
know that's being programmed into his subconscious
Mm,
just to make himself proud. And I've explained it to him even when he was much younger. He's 15 now. And I think I started doing that when he was like 7 or 8 years old. Just saying that, I said, when you make yourself proud, when you know that you made yourself proud, by default, everyone else around you is proud. Mommy and daddy are
yeah.
proud, your friends are, your teachers are, whatever it is. And when you know that you can do better, do better. And the last thing I keep telling him, and that from a very young age, is I tell him there are consequences to your actions.
Mm.
So when he was much younger and I can ground him, or I could have, now it's very difficult, but to
Yeah.
admit that. I tell him that's a consequence to that action. You knew that action was not appropriate, it was not right, it was not allowed, whatever it is. So that's a consequence. And that age, even when he was much younger, I'll tell him, what do you think the consequence should be? Of course, most of the time he didn't think there should be any, but there were times where you'd really kind of step up to it and say, you can take my mobile for a day, or you could take, do this. I get no PlayStation for 2 days, or whatever it
Yeah.
is. And these are things that maybe I believe, of course, I was taught that growing up. Again, I went to a British school, so there were a lot of consequences to your actions in the
I can
British
believe it.
education system. But having it embedded so clearly, I think, is important. That lesson that your children are going to take is kind of to the consequence to their action, but also understanding the impact they have on others and whether they want to utilize it negatively or positively.
Absolutely. And that's what I said to him as well. Look, that was to your sister. If you had allowed that to come out in another environment, you might have paid heavy for that.
Yeah.
There are consequences when you aren't in control of yourself. And I've
Yeah.
experienced that when I was younger. I lost control one time and I found myself at the police station because I was frustrated that someone had stopped before me and I literally made a maneuver that was dangerous. So without thinking about it.
Yeah.
So yes, beautiful. Okay. On that note, we've heard where you're standing. We heard the journey prior to that. Where are you going? Where is this beautiful,
Ooh,
bright butterfly that is appearing now? Where is she flying to? What is her destination?
the destination has always been to get to a point, the kind of, again, building up on everything. It's to positively impact more people through my work. I do speaking engagements, I do work with clients and all of this. But for me now, it's kind of looking, how can this go to a larger number of people? Again, based on the ripple impact effect. Because if I can impact 100 people in a room and these people go out and impact 1 to 5 people in their environment, and it's kind of that. So for me, it's looking at how it's not about bigger stages, it's about more impact to more people within even closed environments. Like, I've spoken to you again about my strategy of work. So even the strategy is no longer kind of looking at one-on-one work, but it's one to few, one to many. Also, because I believe in collective wisdom. I believe that when we are in a room together, in a space together, whether that's 10 people or 100 people, that opportunity to learn, and you were saying that, to learn from each other across different disciplines, especially since my focus is on supporting small and medium enterprises, SMEs, and their leaders. That in itself is such a stressful space to be in. And it does get very lonely because you do hold, for the leaders in those businesses, you hold a lot of responsibility on your shoulders. And most of the time, you don't have that kind of corporate structure and organizational structure that spreads the responsibility around. So having these spaces where these leaders can not just feel the space to be understood and heard, and kind of where I put in the work of diagnostic strategy, kind of looking at the diagnosis of how their strategy could support them for sustainable growth, but also learning from others who are going through the same experiences across different fields. Because even if you're in manufacturing and someone is doing content creation or supporting content creators, there's something to be learned. That there's a lot of cross-pollination just because it's a business. And the essence of a business is you are providing a product or a service in exchange for fees and impact. That's as simple as that. With it come a lot of responsibilities and a lot of understanding and a lot of exposure to internal and external factors, selecting your team members, understanding your financials. We're so financially illiterate because we weren't raised that way.
Mm.
These are all elements that are very, very important for me.
Okay. So that's giving. What about you? What about you? What are you gonna
I've personally been this past year on a health journey. That's I kind of, again, milestones in life where I always thought this was it. This is where I take care of myself. And then that kind of dissipates. This past year has been about a mental and physical health journey. It's about looking at my health and wellness, looking at how do I look at the next 10, 20, 30 years, not just seeking, I'm not trying to biohack my body or looking at longevity from that perspective. I'm looking at how do I stand tall and healthy next to my son for as long as possible, for me and for him. So that for me has been, again, transformational, from physically transformational. So I'm so blessed and grateful for that, but also mentally and emotionally transformational. Realizing that, with the weight that I've let go of, that was physically weighing me down. It was making me play smaller. It was because that projected how I felt about myself. And I'm being very gentle with myself. It was who I am, and it was my security blanket one way or another. It was shielding me from getting overexposed when I wasn't ready for it. And now it's about how do I show up, or every day I'm putting in the effort to show up in the wholeness of me, unapologetically me. I'm not trying to play small to fit into smaller places. I'm not trying to make someone else comfortable by me dumbing myself down. It's about expanding, not just, as you were saying, like I've got a lot of degrees and knowledge and stuff that I would love to embody all of it and share all of it
Mm.
without feeling the need to kind of diminish a little bit of it because someone else is threatened by it. So it's about finding those spaces, and I've been very conscious of finding spaces in people, like I call them my tribe, that allow me to show up as the whole Hanan, not just parts of me. Again, there will always be people that are in my life that I'm not gonna put to the side, that I need to show up as just parts of me, and that's okay. But the majority of my life needs to be all of me. And that in itself is how I keep building up who I am and what I do, and how that is always interconnected. Because again, as a business owner and a business leader, I don't believe you're separated from your business. It's an extension of who you are, because your values, your ethos, your vision, everything kind of trickles down into the business. And they're very interconnected for me. So Hanan is the business doctor's Hanan, and that's how I show up.
It's fascinating. I was watching you from when you first started about your journey moving forward, and the first thing that came was in the head. The head was yeah, this is the plan, this is what I'm going to do, this is how I'm going to help people, etc. And then when I asked about you, then the heart showed up, and it explained the journey it had been on with the weight, etc. And then feeling how you've become lighter, and how you're leaning into that, and the feeling, and how you're able to spread your wings, etc., etc. And it was beautiful that you allowed us to show up walking with your son as well, and that feeling and the energy was literally going from head to toe. And then there was that little thing about the family, suddenly the energy dropped, and it was just like, look, I understand, I've learned, yes, this has to be done because they're not going to change.
Yeah.
If I go in with my arms flapping, etc., that's not gonna, so I know I have to kind of bring myself down a little
Meet
bit
them where
and
they are. Yeah.
leave them where they are. Beautiful, beautiful,
Yeah.
because you are so far ahead. They are where they are, but you know that you have to meet them in the middle just to keep a relationship, just out of
Yeah.
respect, just of who they are. Beautiful. Okay, final thing.
Yeah.
If I met you in 5 years or 10 years, where are you going to be? What are you going to be doing? What have you created? Or is that too much to ask? What is that goal? What is that big vision in the distance that you are heading towards? What is that destination?
Um, I think doing what I'm doing, I like. Hopefully, it will be a much bigger scale, just to get to positively impact more people and to
Yeah, but
change
I'm going
more
to
lives.
stop you there. I'm going to stop you
Yeah,
there because the mind will go,
that's
yeah, but
important.
you're affecting a lot of people as it is. So why
Yeah.
do we need to move forward? Why do we need to create something bigger? Your mind needs to be convinced a little bit more with the words that you're saying.
I think you know what? I've realized that I don't, I'm not putting a vision for myself 5 or 10 years down the line
Okay.
because I'm working that I want tomorrow to be better than today. And I know that things, as I was saying earlier, I'm making as informed as possible decisions based on what I know today. In
Okay,
five
so
years,
let
for
me
example,
stop. Okay, Hannah, let me just stop you. So what you're saying is each day you're taking one step forward and then you're feeling that out and then seeing, okay, is that right? Okay, let's take another step, 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 step.
like, of course, yes, the vision is there. I want to be on the biggest stages, working with the biggest organizations, supporting as many companies as possible and all of that. But as I'm saying, like in 5 years, in 3 years, our son finishes high school. And that's a whole new phase of our lives. Like, we
Mm,
don't know where he'll end up with university. We don't know how life would be. We're here in Qatar right now. I don't know if that's going to be the case in 5 years. So there are a lot of, as I was saying, there are a lot of parameters within this equation that I cannot today tell you, oh, that is my plan in 5 years, because then I would be a bit obnoxious, and there are so many things happening. Like, as we are talking right now, the region is shifting. I don't know
mm.
what's going to be happening next week. We have a 10-day deadline. I don't know what's going to happen beyond that.
Is it 10 days or is it
It
longer?
was, yeah, it was 5 days, and then now it's 10 days. And um, so that's what I mean when I'm like, I don't know what's going to be there in
Mm,
5 years. I know that I'm putting in the best effort that I can with whatever I've got today to make tomorrow a better day, to make more impact and reach more people tomorrow, to educate and also ground myself in more knowledge tomorrow so I can, again, support more people. On a personal level, it's working on making sure that I am grounded as a person, as a mother, as a wife, as everything. But first me, first Hanan, because that's the base upon which everything else builds. I'm as healthy as I can be, honoring my body, that vessel, mind, body, and spirit, to be able to carry on from that perspective, keep my passion alive, not just for life, but also for what I do. So these are the things I can tell you. That's my plan. But if I tell you specifics of, I've always set up, for example, the Business Doctor as a boutique advisory firm. So I don't have the vision, even though I support people with sustainable growth, but I don't have the vision of having 100 people work for the Business Doctor. So that's not part of how I wanted to structure this business. But I would love to support 1,000 companies to be able to realize their vision of their company,
mm.
whether that is a 10-person company or it's a million people company. I don't know. It depends on them. So that's why I'm telling you that's the vision I have, but I don't have the specifics of in 5 years or in 10 years where that's going to be.
Okay, I'll leave it there. I think you've taken us on an amazing journey, and I really appreciate you showing up and being
Thank
open,
you.
honest, and vulnerable, and allowing us to join you, as I said, here today, the journey that you've been on, and where it's going to take you. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, my friend. It's been an honor and a pleasure always. And I'm looking forward to our next coffee update.
Absolutely. When I'm back in the country, for sure. And also, you'll be back on this show as well, because I love to touch base, to walk beside you, and I'm sure the audience will as well. They would love to join you further down
Let's
the
do it.
line. All right.
My honor.
All right. Well, thank you, Hanan. I really
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time out, and
My
have a
pleasure.
great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.